Okay, hello and welcome to our Apprenticeships Uncovered webinar. Thank you very much to those of you who've already tuned in. I can see we've got a couple of attendees here. We are going to start properly in about a minute's time. We're just waiting on a few more attendees because at the moment we've only got one or two of you who've signed in, so thanks very much for that. If you can just wait just a moment longer and then hopefully the others should have signed in by then. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are back on. Hello again and welcome to those of you who have tuned in to the Apprenticeships Uncovered webinar. Apologies for starting just a couple of moments later than planned. We were just waiting on a couple more people to sign in. Okay, so by way of introduction, my name is Nadia Morad and I'm the project leader for the Southern Universities Network. And I'm here with one of my colleagues who will introduce herself.
And I'm Fiona Benton, and I'm currently the Widening Participation Outreach Officer at the University of Winchester.
Okay, so thanks again for giving up the time during your busy day to tune into the webinar. We really do appreciate that. First things first, before we go any further, could you just have a look on your screen and you should have either a questions or a chat function, so somewhere where you're able to type. And if you can hear me and the audio quality is fine your end, could you just type yes, just so that I'm aware that you're able to hear? Okay, we've had one response through. If the others of you who are there can hear, could you just type yes, just so that we know that you are able to hear us? Okay, thanks very much for doing that. We've got responses through from everybody now. Okay, so the webinar today is going to be delivered by Alison Sumpter, who is the Network Manager for ALFI. The webinar is on behalf of the Southern Universities Network and in collaboration with the University of Winchester. And this is part of the project funded by HEFCE for the Degree Apprenticeship Development Fund. So very long grand title for the webinar there. As you hopefully know from when you registered, the webinar is hopefully going to provide you with an update on all aspects of apprenticeships in light of the apprenticeship reforms. So Alison is going to cover the basics, how to apply, content on higher and degree apprenticeship opportunities, and also point you out to some resources and some support that's available for you as well. Just to let you know at the start, the webinar is being recorded, and that's to enable you to share it with colleagues if you'd like to, but also to be able to refer back to it at a later stage if you need to. In just a moment's time, I'm going to hand over to Alison, who is going to lead on the delivery of the webinar. As Alison's presenting, you should be able to see her screen. So not at the moment, but in just a moment, you should be able to see the PowerPoint. And as Alison is moving from slide to slide, you should be able to follow that. If for any reason at all, you're not able to see the PowerPoint, or if the sound quality dips at any point for you, I will be keeping an eye on the chat function and the questions function. So please do write a comment in there if that happens at any point. Likewise, if you have any questions related to the content, as Alison is presenting, please do type questions in there and we'll come to those questions at the end of the webinar. So they should be addressed at the end for you. At the very, very end of the webinar as well, we have 3 very short questions for you, just based on your experience of the webinar and some feedback. And that feedback is really invaluable to us, so please do just stay tuned to the end of the webinar just to answer that for us. And we should finish by 1:30 at the very latest. So we will absolutely not keep you longer than that point. Okay, great. So I will be keeping an eye on the questions, so do type even from now if anything's come up for you. And I am now going to hand over to Alison to lead on the webinar.
Okay, I'm hoping you can now see the slides in front of you. Can I just have a check on that? Perfect. Okay, I'm going to get going. Thank you very much again to the Southern University Network for arranging today. As Nadia has mentioned, I'm Alison Sumpter. I'm the Network Manager for ALFI. I am going to cover quite a lot in the time we've got available, as mentioned, so I won't dwell on that one, but I thought we'd get started by you getting used to using the chat box, and I thought we could just do 3 very quick quiz questions. So Nadia and Fiona will be looking at the chat box and they'll come back in and tell me when you're ready for the answers, but see if you can just type in what you think are the answers to the following 3 questions. How many apprenticeship opportunities are posted on Find an Apprenticeship each year? Have a guess if you don't know. What have you got for me, Nadia? Are there any guesses?
So we've had 1 guess through, Alison, and somebody has guessed 2,000.
Oh, okay. So here's the answer. Hopefully that's a pleasant surprise. There are 28,000 and it's increasing all of the time. The amazing thing about apprenticeships this year is it is literally starting to hit record levels of interest. So you're going to see many, many more than you're obviously thinking about. So next quick question. What is the level 3 apprenticeship equivalent to? So a nice easy one for our audience today.
Okay, we've had a response through Alison, and we've got a guess of A levels or BTEC levels as well.
There we go, all good, yes, absolutely. So that A-level equivalent route. And the final question, we know we have degree apprenticeships available. I wonder if you know which is the most popular degree apprenticeship to date.
Alison, we've had a guess through of management.
Perfect, well done. So we could stop there, but hopefully there'll be some other questions that are slightly harder to answer. So I'll give you some more content, and then hopefully at the end you can ask me any questions about anything I haven't covered. So thank you for your interaction with that. And I'll start on an overview now of apprenticeships. So maybe some of you were at the IAG conference last week, and you will have seen a couple of these slides before. There's also quite a lot of different content, so I'll whistle through some. Please, if I'm going too fast, do put it in the chat box. If I'm going too slow, put it in the chat box. Happy to accommodate the audience. So first off, the components of an apprenticeship, just as a brief reminder, it's very much about having to be a real job first and foremost with an employer. So we're talking about the full salary in accordance with the job role. Sometimes there's a traineeship, a trainee wage, which is some points below the salary. It could be the apprenticeship salary itself, but more and more we're finding that the opportunities we're hosting on our various job boards are in line with the actual job role that people are going for. It, of course, is leading to qualifications and, alongside that, real work experience in the job of choice. So it's that fantastic CV build as well as qualifications and the full package together. Under the new regime of moving from frameworks to standards, it's critical that providers of apprenticeships make sure and audit against the fact that every single apprentice has at least 20% of their time spent off the job in effective building of their knowledge, their skills, or their experience. So they have to be away from the workstation carrying out activities. That is reasonably new, not in terms of the fact that that learning has never been done before, but the fact that it is so tightly monitored and audited, and that came in last year. And of course, because it's a real job with a real employer, it has to have a contract of employment, and that can also have holiday pay, sick pay, all of the normal pay packages you would have in any role would be included. The additionality is, of course, you have the training provider to supply mentoring support, pastoral care. And so the apprentice, as opposed to just if one were to go out and get a job, will be more highly supported by a variety of people in different roles. And the duration, we say 1 to 4 years, but actually what we're looking for in apprenticeships is progression. So people may be an apprentice for a lot longer than that because they may be progressing from level 2 right the way through and up to level 7. Which takes me swiftly on to my next slide. Hopefully, again, you'll have seen this one before, but just a brief reminder of those levels. We've got intermediate apprenticeships at level 2, then the advanced at level 3, and the higher in degree go from 4 right the way up to 7, with 6 being equivalent to a full-time degree and 7 to a master's. All apprenticeships will be underpinned by knowledge, skills, and behavioural development, and all of those are very much in line with the job role that one has applied for. So all of that is hopefully known to you already. What's changing every day are the sorts of areas that are using apprenticeships and developing apprenticeship standards. So last year we saw the most radical reforms in apprenticeships that we've ever had, and that is moving from what we used to know, i.e. frameworks, where the NVQ was embedded alongside functional skills and English and maths, to a much more employer-led approach. And all of these and many, many hundreds more are just some of the apprenticeship opportunities that can now be applied for, and more are developing literally every day. We're going to come back to a little bit about this later on. So, how much does an apprentice earn? So, you will know that there is a national minimum wage for apprentices, and it currently stands at £3.50 an hour. What is known but less commonly talked about is the fact that a survey last year showed that the basic wage was much closer to £170 a week for level 2 apprentices. Now, if you're at level 3, 4 or above, it's going to be much higher than that. As I said earlier, employers have realised that to get the right calibre of person to undertake their apprenticeships, they really do have to be paying the going rate for the role and be supporting apprentices adequately. They also need to be shown progression through the salary structures, and all of these things are now taken into account, and providers are so much better at really making sure that the employers follow their lead in terms of the quality, the progression opportunities and starting salaries and so forth. So the opportunities can be really quite handsome. And also there's a myth around people leaving at the end. 90% stay in that same job at the end. This isn't about churning one apprentice after another. Now, of course, we still have pockets of bad practice, but they're really highly controlled and being eradicated as much as we can. So you're talking about people that are able to progress through the job of their choice and really stay with the employer. The employer's invested in them. It's in their interest to keep them and to progress them on throughout their organisation onto the higher levels. And of course, with the apprenticeship standards being written right the way up to level 7, that opportunity is so much greater than that we've ever had in the past. So I just want to go across some of the other changes to apprenticeships, and I find this slide the best to just sort of sum it up really. In 2012, we started the Apprenticeship Reform agenda, and the objective was to bring employers absolutely central to the whole apprenticeship piece. And what the government was seeking to do was to make sure that every standard that is written for apprenticeships has employer backing, that they have a really good idea of the investment that goes into apprenticeships. Previously, the government just paid the training bill. Now they need to know exactly what's being paid on their behalf, or if they're a levy payer, they will be paying it. And it's about making sure that the quality is high for both the apprentice and the employer throughout the journey. So the apprenticeship reforms enabled groups of like-minded employers to come together, at least 10 of them, in an industry sector would come together as a trailblazer group, and they would say, yeah, we definitely in our industry want an apprenticeship in X. And they would then have the role of defining what the knowledge, the skills and the behaviours are for the job in that particular sector or job role. So that would be called the apprenticeship standard itself. It's that short, concise standard that replaced the old frameworks, and it has to be written in plain English so that anybody can pick up and really understand what good looks like if one is an apprentice in that particular field. The other thing they had to do is then go on to say, well, how are we going to assess the apprentice to make sure that they have achieved either good or even distinction? So they start by writing an assessment plan. They have to come up with how the whole of the programme can be assessed, but particularly every apprenticeship standard has to have an endpoint assessment. Some of those have a grading system within them, and some of them link to professional recognition standards. So for example, we always use surveyors. They will be recognised by their professional body as part of their apprenticeship, as well as gaining the qualifications that are embedded within the standard. So the apprentice will need to be signed off by somebody who has had no part of the actual training journey. So I liken this to the driving test, where somebody can be learning to drive with an instructor, but that instructor would never make the final assessment of whether or not they pass. And within apprenticeships, that same scenario is now the case. We have different organisations able to deliver the actual on-programme delivery, and new organisations who will deliver the endpoint assessment. There's at no point any apprenticeships that will last less than 12 months. We are quite used to that in the younger age group, but it's for every single apprenticeship that is let. And of course, apprenticeships are for people from 16 years and there is no upper age limit. So this is about saying you can't just join any old apprenticeship for, say, 3 months, not have any training delivered and suddenly be assessed as competent in that role. There has to be a substantial piece of learning delivery, of gaining the knowledge, the skills and the behaviours that the job role requires, and that is what the apprenticeship standard will be looking for. And as I mentioned, the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle is that employers need to know exactly where the funding levels are set. So every standard that's created is put within one of 15 bands of funding, and those funding bands will denote either what the government will pay for the delivery of the training and assessment for that apprenticeship, or what, if they're a large employer, what can come out of their own levy pot. So just another couple of bits around the paperwork. The move from frameworks to standards, the standard basically needs to, as I said, describe the skills, the knowledge and the behaviours. They will also describe whether qualifications are embedded within that particular standard. Some are, some aren't. So that's another move for us. Before, there was always an MVQ qualification embedded. Now there's the opportunity for employers to say, well, actually, this is much more generic role. We want them to have the knowledge, the skills and behaviours and to be assessed as those within the framework of the standard itself. They don't need to add on another qualification. That said, that would be around mandatory qualifications. What an employer can always choose to do is add on qualifications as they see them fit for their particular work role or work placement that they're offering. So the standards compared to the frameworks are much more role specific. I've already mentioned they're developed by the Trailblazer groups, i.e. the employers themselves, not training providers, as would have been the case in the past with training providers and awarding bodies coming together to develop them. They're very much based on the actual job roles that are out there in the fields. If the candidates that are applying have not already achieved level 2 equivalent with English and Maths, there will be a requirement for English and Maths content to be delivered alongside the standard. And again, just to clarify, there will also be a need for that independent endpoint assessment. Oh, sorry. So when it comes to the actual standards that are available, the Institute for Apprenticeships, this slide with the link at the top is the best possible reference point for you. So you can access these slides at the end, and that hot link will take you straight to this page. And as you can see, we have an abattoir worker that comes up first, which I'm just hoping that other A's are coming out, so we don't continue to just see abattoir straight away, because it doesn't sound that attractive. But it will show you, as these two examples do, that whether they're in development, and you can still click on it and see where in the development process they are, or approved for delivery, as is Able Seafarer there. And if they're approved for delivery, by clicking on the title, you'll be able to download the 2 to 3 page of the standard, and then you'll be able to see the content of that. And this is really important for advising students, because this is where they can really get a handle of the skills that they would need and the types of roles that are being offered under each standard. When it comes to the assessment plan, this is a much more detailed piece. You can easily access them through the same site that I just showed, but what that does is it explains the what, the how and the who will carry out and what decisions will be made by that endpoint assessment organisation. it's a much more complex piece because it will break each task down into how it will be assessed, what the quality might look like, whether it has different levels within that quality, but it will be set up and approved by the government because it has to be reliable and consistent so that the standards can be applied throughout the whole of the UK by different employers, different organisations to a consistently high level. So the assessment plan is a really critical piece for those employers and providers that are then delivering against the said standard. And the assessment organisations will choose how they will make their endpoint assessments. And these are just a few of the examples of the types of testing mechanisms that are in the field at the moment. So what's particularly popular is the professional dialogue, but also the portfolio is still there. An observation of practical. So for example, if you're a trainee chef, you'll be taken to a new kitchen, you'll be delivered a tray of ingredients and asked to compile a specific recipe or a specific menu. So they're very much akin to the role that one would be expected to do on a day-to-day basis, just like the driving test, again, example, and that's how the test will be made. So I wanted to go on to talk about the newer opportunities, and these come at the top end of the apprenticeship spectrum. So we're looking at the level 6s and 7s. And the big question really for many of our young people looking at apprenticeships at the moment is, how do I decide between perhaps going to full-time university or the apprenticeship route? And it is a difficult decision piece. So the facts about degree apprenticeships as they stand, one, they're of course developing on a daily basis. They are the new kid on the block. So we have 80 universities currently offering apprenticeships at degree level and master's level. The qualifications they're offering are exactly the same, but the method of delivery is of course different. One of the things that might be different, as I mentioned, is because the student is able to also be in work, they can pick up the credentials they need to achieve their professional status alongside their degree. So that could be a benefit. But some of the other differences will be that, unlike going through the UCAS system, the employer won't necessarily, the employer will select where they let their apprenticeships. So they would need to define exactly what their particular degree apprenticeship programme needs to follow. So for example, my local example would be Portsmouth University. So they would work with local employers, they would come up together and look at exactly what the curriculum might need to include, how the standard would be interpreted by that particular employer, and build a programme. So there's much more employer focus, as is the requirement, as I mentioned, of the government with all apprenticeships. Another factor about the choice between degree and part-time, full-time or part-time degrees through apprenticeships will be the duration. So students know that on average their degree will take 3 or possibly 4 years if it's a sandwich, but if it's an apprenticeship, they need to take into account that they are full-time working. So it's a part-time degree, it may take slightly longer. But of course, the thing that's interested most in this, both students and of course their parents, is the difference when it comes to student debt. Because in the case of apprenticeships, it is the employer and the government that will be paying the student fees, not the actual student, or in some cases their parent. So there's quite a lot that needs to be considered, and both are absolutely bona fide opportunities, but it has to be right for the person. So a couple of the other differences will be that with apprenticeships, they're likely to be advertised throughout the year, with universities becoming more used to not just September start dates. I've already mentioned the payment as well there, which is in the second bubble. And the third is that you can, you're likely to apply through the employer, Whereas for full-time study, we know the UCAS system is much more embedded and known about by students. So when it comes to advising, I think there are some quite clear messages, but what we always say is it's best to have a plan A and a plan B. There's no one that's better or worse than the other. It has to be right for the individual, and it is about sort of making decisions based on as much information as can be gleaned. So I'm going to move on quite swiftly to how to access opportunities. So at all levels, Find an Apprenticeship is the go-to site for apprenticeships. So hopefully you're fully aware of that. What we're starting to see from this year and onwards is that the UCAS site is also going to list all higher and degree apprenticeship opportunities in their career finder section. So we're still seeing how that's going to work, because again, that's at the moment it's more about listing and then coming to apply through Find an Apprenticeship. So just a very quick reminder of Find an Apprenticeship. It is about registering first, then being sent an access code to make sure it fulfills the sort of security levels of any government website. But then it's encouraging people to research, to search for exactly what types of jobs they might want, and of course to build their CV and to start applying. They can set up alerts so that they can have things pushed back to them rather than just always remembering to go in. So if something comes up that fits their exact requirements, it will be pushed to them by an email or a text. But what we also say is it's about knowing which employers are available locally, who is recruiting, and making contact with them, because sometimes we need to be informing more and more employers that actually this is open to them, this is a route that they can get support with. They may even be a levy payer and not have accessed their levy. So we could be doing them a favour if people want to work for particular employers and they're not sure if they've got an offer. So we always put that one there as well to make sure we sort of square the circle. So just in terms of jobs out there, again, I mentioned earlier, we are seeing so many more apprenticeship opportunities. And last week I was showcasing just a couple of the local ones, but just for some statistics, if people are willing to travel between 5 and 30 miles, you can see the difference when it comes to the numbers of opportunities that are available. I've got to say this changes daily, and it's always worth them doing a search on the Find an Apprenticeship to get the most up-to-date stats for themselves and in the search areas that they are particularly interested in. When it comes to the sorts of employers that are supporting apprenticeships and offering apprenticeships, I've put on the screen for you now some classic logos of some of the big players, but I'm concerned that we shouldn't forget that we have fantastic local and smaller employers that might not be as recognisable on a day-to-day basis, but are fantastic opportunities. So we let around about the same number of opportunities to small to medium-sized employers as we do to these rather large household names. But these ones, of course, are rather more notable and well known. So they do tend to sort of come up on organisations' wish lists quite often. Not a bad thing. Just remember there are so many more opportunities from some of the fewer, some of the lesser known local employers. So just to round up the overview, just a quick summary. I hope you'll agree that we do have an absolute alternative to full-time study if it's right for the individual, because it is about comparable qualifications, it's about a comparable opportunity, and in some cases it's about the learning style being much more appropriate. It is about that opportunity for a person to build their career, their professional skills, and all of that accreditation while they are earning. That's never changed. And of course, we have that opportunity for within degree apprenticeships for their tuition fees to be covered by the employer. It's still nationally recognised, so totally passport ready, transferable skills. It is about thinking through exactly who one wants to work with and encouraging them to think about apprenticeship routes if they're not already, and we can provide support with that. And it's also about remembering that this is a supported opportunity by way of both the employer and the provider will be making sure that the apprentice is happy and progressing and doing really well as they go through their progression. And so there's much more support that can be offered. So that's just a whistle stop. I hope it's inspired some questions, which I'll come back to answer. I will also be back towards the end to look at some resources that I can direct you towards and offer. But just for the next few minutes, I would like to hand back to Fiona, who's just going to talk about some local case studies based on the Winchester knowledge. So I'm just going to unshare my screen. Hopefully, Fiona and Nadia, you can pick that back up.
Thanks, Alison. Okay, we are just going to share Fiona's screen, which she will be talking through in just a moment.
Okay.
Alison, just to say, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just make us presenters again, that way we'll be able to share the screen. Thanks.
Perfect. Sorry, that's the one bit I forgot.
No problem.
Hello. So I'm just going to talk about what University of Winchester have been doing with the HEFCE funded degree apprenticeship fund. So we were awarded £250,000 to help raise awareness for degree apprenticeships in general. We have many activities ready for this money. However, for widening participation, we were looking at developing key influencers knowledge and understanding of degree apprenticeships, which is hopefully what this webinar will do. And another activity was to run a social media campaign to target young people to dispel any myths around degree apprenticeships. So I was hopefully going to show this video. What I'm going to do is play a little bit of it at the beginning, stop it, see if you can actually hear it. If you can't, I'll try and talk through what the videos involve, and we'll go from there. If you were able to hear that, could you just let me know so I know? Okay, so I understand that you wasn't able to hear the video. So what I'm going to do is just talk through the social media campaign and kind of try and describe what we're trying to achieve through this. So the campaign was targeted at young people to try and dispel any myths they may have. One of the common ones that I came across was that if you do an apprenticeship, you're not clever enough. So through this campaign, we're trying to challenge those views and change the thought process of young people to say that apprenticeships is a route that you can gain a degree in. So throughout, we've gone through different case studies of current apprenticeship students, and they've gone into degree apprenticeships through many different ways. So this could be BTECs, A-levels, and just progressing through lower apprenticeships. So hopefully the campaign will show that you're able to gain a degree even if you don't want to go to university. So that's literally an overall view of what we've been trying to do with the campaign. So what I'm going to do is pass you back to Alison, who will finish this all off. Thank you.
How's that? Can everyone see that? Can you just give me a heads up, Nadia, that that's come back?
Yeah, Alison, we can see your screen now. If you just full screen it, I think that would be easier. But yeah, we can see the slide that you're on.
I have full screened it.
Oh.
Okay, no problem. See.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can see your screen, Alison. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sorry for the just the handing back there. So what I wanted to do is just finish off the last couple of minutes just to rattle through some resources that hopefully will help to support you to disseminate anything you would like to on apprenticeships. So the first one is the biggie. We are being supported by the Sun. When I say we, our feed network has been supported by the Sun project to develop an event on the 23rd of April at Fareham College. You can see the timings and so forth there. What will happen at that event is it's very much for teachers, not necessarily careers teachers, any teachers that can come along, hear a little bit about some of the fantastic opportunities we have locally. So we've got some employers coming and some apprentices, but also to pick up a resource pack so that you can, it's like a pop-up and play. That's how we're designing it, so that there'll be all sorts in the pack for you, which will include the things on your screen. So PowerPoint presentations for different year groups of apprentices, case studies. There will be different information sheets that can be made either into A4 fact sheets or posters, and there will be all sorts of bits and pieces around interactivity. So we're trying to make some games and all sorts of things all go into this pack that you'll be able to take away free of charge for those people registering and attending the 2.5-hour session on the 23rd of April. So I hope that is a useful resource. We will also make it, the parts of it that we can, we'll make available on our website for those that can't attend. So watch this space for that. So a couple of other small items just to remind you. The Alfie website is there to give you an up-to-date information portal for where we're at with apprenticeships. So for example, by clicking at the top of this bar up here, you on the main bar, it says apprenticeships, and then you can go right the way down to your local town to find out which occupation you might be interested in and who in that locality would be able to deliver. So the providers are all listed there with their contact details, just to make it really easy for students to find out who might be letting different apprenticeships in different localities throughout our patch. The higher and degree vacancy list comes out. I've put the December one here. We've already got the February one available. So again, when you get the slides, the link to this is available in the notes pages, and each time it's updated, that link will go through to the most up-to-date resource. And what this will show is all of the higher and degree apprenticeship opportunities available nationally. So it shows some of the really exciting offers that some of the large and smaller organisations are offering. We always would encourage those who need more support to contact the National Careers Service. So I'm sure you have all of the details for them at your fingertips, but just in case, there's a reminder there. Again, I mentioned earlier, apprenticeships are changing so much at the moment, and not least the number of standards that are available with these employer groups working them up all of the time. So this A to Z list is good to have as a hot link. It will list the some 520 different titles that are available, and again it will add to them on a regular basis. So it's always worth just sort of checking back in, or getting students to check back in to see what's new on the block. There's some fantastic things coming our way. So for example, I talked last week about Hampshire County Council alone, who will be recruiting solicitors, paralegals, surveyors, HR, procurement people, all through apprenticeship routes as of September this year. So right on our doorstep, fantastic opportunities at all levels. The apprenticeship guide comes out every year, should be sent directly to your schools. If not, again, there's a link at the bottom there. I think you'll be able to order a copy through that or come back to me. Up-to-date case studies, information again on exactly what is involved in many of the apprenticeships available. Amazing Apprenticeships is the site that we know and love, I hope, and I've just put one of their hundreds and hundreds of resources up there for you, which is the 101 amazing apprenticeship activities for schools. So if you do want to get interactive, there's things in there that take from 5 minutes right the way through to about 30 minutes within different sessions that you might want. So again, trying to just refer you to things so you don't have to do too much development work. You can just get straight down to implementation to make lives easier. We have the complete guide to higher and degree apprenticeship, which is a which guide. Again, because of the interest in higher and degree apprenticeships, this came out in 2017, and I think is another really useful resource for people that just are finding it difficult to either choose which routes are right for them, or once they have chosen, which university offers might be right for them. Again, one of the other resources that I think is fantastic is a resource for teachers to help think about the different recruitment techniques that employers are deploying. And this particular resource is a video piece that just shows the differences with different employer techniques, from psychometrics to running assessment centres and so forth. So they're just a smattering of some of the resources that I've just chosen. There are many, many others, but that hopefully will just give you a flavour. But I know we're sort of quite short on time, and I wanted to leave some time at the end for any questions. So I will pause there, and I'll stay open mic and bring Nadia and Fiona back in, and hopefully if there are any questions we can take them now.
Okay, so just to say, if you've got any questions at all, we're just going to give a minute now for you to type them into the question box. Okay, so no questions at the moment, and that's absolutely fine. I think Alison's provided us with a really comprehensive overview of apprenticeships there, and hopefully that means that all questions have been answered. Just to, before we finish the webinar, and it looks like we should be finishing probably just a little bit ahead of schedule, which is good, I'm just going to launch 3 questions which are going to come up individually. They're very brief. It will take you just a moment to fill in your responses to each. Just to get some feedback on the webinar and to feed into our next webinars coming up. So the first question I'm going to launch now, and it should appear on your screens, and if you can just answer it honestly. Okay, and I'll close that one now and just launch the second question. Thanks for your responses to that first one. And the final question should be coming up for you now. Okay, great. Thank you very much for your responses there, and your feedback, as I say, is really, really helpful for us. Okay, so we are a little bit ahead of schedule, but I've got my eye on the questions box, and it doesn't look like there's any further questions that have come through. If you do have any questions at all that arise after the webinar, or perhaps if you show the webinar to colleagues or rewatch it at any stage, then of course do feel free to email the SUN email address, so sun@soton, SOTON.ac.uk. And we can also forward on any questions to Alison as well if you don't currently have her email address. Okay, so I think all that remains to say is thank you very, very much to Alison for delivering such an informative and interesting webinar for us today, and also to Fiona for her presentation on the University of Winchester section as well. We really hope that you enjoyed it, and thank you again as well for tuning in and for giving up part of your day to take part in the webinar. Okay, we're going to close the webinar browser in just a moment. So thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.